God offers comfort to all. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 3 to 11. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. For the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with His comfort through Christ. Even when we are weighed down with troubles, it is for your comfort and salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you. Then you can patiently endure the same things we suffer. We are confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort God gives us. We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God, who raises the dead. And He did rescue us from mortal danger, and He will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in Him, and He will continue to rescue us. And you are helping us by praying for us. Then many people will give thanks because God has graciously answered so many prayers for our safety. Many people think when God comforts us, our troubles should go away. But if that were always so, people would turn to God only out of a desire to be relieved of pain and not out of love for Him. We must understand that being comforted can also mean receiving strength, encouragement, and hope to deal with our troubles. The more we suffer, the more comfort God gives us. If you are feeling overwhelmed, allow God to comfort you. Remember that every trial you endure will help you comfort other people who are suffering similar troubles. Suffering for Christ refers to those afflictions we experience as we serve Christ. At the same time, Christ suffers with His people, since they are united with Him. In Acts chapter 9 verse 4 and 5, Christ asked Paul why he was persecuting him. This implies that Christ suffered with the early Christians when they were persecuted. Paul had a radically different way of suffering. Suffering, especially trials and discomfort associated with the advancement of Christ's kingdom, is God's way of allowing Christians to become more like Jesus, to suffer for the gospel just as Jesus suffered for it. Philippians chapter 1 verse 29 and chapter 3 verse 10. Peter agreed with Paul. Christians should rejoice when they suffer, for in their own suffering they will in some way experience what is meant for Jesus to suffer for their sins. 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 12 and 13. In addition to drawing people closer to Christ, Suffering can also help them grow in their faith. God uses suffering to improve His people and shape them into better Christians. In fact, suffering should be thought of as the necessary pain that accompanies spiritual growth. In Romans, Paul noted that suffering produces perseverance, which in turn produces Christian character. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 and 4. See also James chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, and 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 6, and Revelation chapter 2, verse 2 and 19. This passage, verse 6 and 7, highlights another benefit to suffering. It teaches the sufferer how to encourage others who are also suffering. Paul does not give details about the hardships in Asia, although his accounts of all 3 missionary journeys record many difficult trials he faced. Acts chapter 13, verse 2 to chapter 14, verse 28, and Acts chapter 15, verse 40 to chapter 21, verse 17. He does write that they felt that they were going to die and realized that they could do nothing to help themselves. They simply had to rely on God. We often depend on our own skills and abilities when life seems easy and only turn to God when we feel unable to help ourselves. But as we realize our own powerlessness without Him and our need for His constant help in our lives, we come to depend on Him more and more. God is our source of power, and we receive His help by keeping in touch with Him. With this attitude of dependence, problems will drive us to God rather than away from Him. Learn how to rely on God daily. Paul requested prayer for himself and his companions as they traveled to spread God's message. Pray for pastors, teachers, missionaries, and others who are spreading the good news. Satan will challenge anyone making a real difference for God. Please help share the good news. Like and subscribe.